So we're going to start the Maimer, we're going to continue the Maimer of Tשיש, which is in this pamphlet on page 5. And we learned in the Pasuk Tשיש, there's two ways to explain the words Tשיsh. In other words, who it refers to. And that is because in Hebrew, the word Tשיsh has a dual meaning. And what is called in the grammar, the grammarians call it apoel emid or apoel yirtza. Apoel means a verb. But the apoel emid means that the verb is referring to the person himself. And apoel yirtza means, in other words, what's happening to him, what he's doing. And the apoel yirtza is a verb that refers to what is being done to someone else. So in the context of the pasuk, if it's apoel emid, it refers to an akeva with the taf. So tשיש, we're talking about the mother. So tשיש, she should rejoice. And so it's referring to apoel emid within herself. And what is the rejoicing? The rejoicing is bekibutz baneha, the ingathering of her children. That's the joy. She was העקרה, she was barren, she didn't have children. And now she's rejoicing with the ingathering of her children. That's one understanding of the word tשיש. Or the word tשיש is apoel yirtza, which is referring to that someone should make her happy. So that's apoel yirtza. That's referring to Hashem. That tשיש, Hashem should make her happy. And bekibutz baneh. That's the same with the ingathering of her children. So it's either she should be happy, or that Hashem should make her happy. Right? In Hebrew, the word tשיש lends itself to both implications. So it's known, and this is a klal, it was brought many times, that when there's two explanations on a pasuk, so they have a connection with each other. It's not, they're mutually inclusive. So they both have a connection. So we need to understand these two, how they fit together, both whether it's she's happy in herself, or the Eibusher should make her happy. And the way the Alter Rebbe will explain it, based on the understanding of the Inyan, the way the Alter Rebbe will explain is first she's happy with herself, and that brings about a happiness that comes from the Eibusher. So like it says, Kemayim apanim alpanim, so she's happy. When we say she, we're not talking about she. We're talking about the Yid. The Yid, the Knesset Yisrael is like the Kala. The Isha, in general, refers to Knesset Yisrael, to the Neshama, to the Jewish people. And when she is happy, meaning to say that she has the Simcha, she brings about her own Simcha, so that brings about the Simcha of tשיש, the Eibusher will make her happy. What's the difference between her Simcha and the Simcha that comes from the Eibusher? We'll see, but that's how the Alter Rebbe ties both Pirushim together. Then the pasuk continues and says that the Akara, the barren one, is happy because of the ingathering of her children. Now the obvious question is, why do we call her an Akara? Why do we call her barren if she has children? If she has children, she's not barren. So how does that fit? So the simple understanding is the Akara means she was an Akara. The one who was an Akara now has children. But the way the Alter Rebbe is going to explain it is that you can have children and still be called an Akara. How do you have children and still be called an Akara? Because it depends if you have a son or a daughter. Meaning to say, based on what we understand, what does a son mean and what does a daughter mean? So if you have a daughter, meaning you only attain the level which is represented by a bas, so you can still be called an akara, because you didn't attain the level of a zachar. So that the Alter Rebbe is going to explain. That's the meaning of the pasuk, that the akara, that she's called an akara, she's still called an akara because the yid didn't reach the level of zachar. Okay. That's the nekuda of the explanation of the pasuk. So to understand this, we need to talk about the narrative in general, which is what is a son, what is a daughter, what's going on here. So with that's how it connects to this week's parsha. Because the parsha says Isha ki Tazria. So the parsha talks about, based on the Gemara says that there are three partners in a child. You have the Ish, the Isha, and the Eibishter. The Ish gives, the Gemara says, loiven. The Gemara calls it loiven. Again, like I said last class, this is not a science class. I don't know how this fits with modern science, if it fits or how it fits. I'm just right now talking about it in the oisius, in the terminology of the Gemara. The Gemara says that the Ish contributes the loiven. The Isha contributes the oidim, and they're both called zera. They're both called the seed. The Ish, the seed of the Ish, and the seed of the Isha. And together, they produce a Vlad. The Vlad is the outcome of both the Ish and the Isha. And the Torah says, the Gemara is medayik from the pasuk, Isha ki Tazria, when she is the one that initiates the first part of that union, of that coming together, of the Zera Ish and Zera Isha. So then, what is the outcome of that union? The outcome is a bas. When she is the one, the outcome is a ben. And when the initiation begins from him, in other words, his Zera is what is contributing first, then the outcome is a bas. And last week we explained that based on the first maim of the Alter Rebbe on page 3 in this pamphlet. But now that's not negea the explanation of that. Now is negea what is the understanding of that in Avodas Hashem. So Benu Bas refers to Ava and Yira in general. But over here, Benu Bas is referring to two different levels of Ava. The Ben is the Zachar, is referring to what is called in Zohar, Ava Rabba, a great love, and the Bas is referring to Ava Zuta, a small love. What's the difference between Ava Rabba and Ava Zuta? So the Alter Rebbe explains that Ava Rabba is such a level of Ava that he completely leaves his mitzias. In other words, usually when we talk about Ava, so you understand how that which you have love to that which you have love towards is something that benefits you. You benefit from it. It makes you feel good. There's a certain appreciation, a certain sense of satisfaction that one receives, and because of that, they're drawn to that which they love. But to say that the love brings about a sense, the love is experienced in such a way that a person completely detaches from his mitzias, he becomes ois, he becomes null and void. That's not love. Love is the experience of in other words, I'm experiencing something and I appreciate something, is Mamela, I have that's the experience of love. But to say that a person goes outside, he completely loses himself, he completely loses his mitzias, that's not love.
What is that?
That's Mesiras Nefesh. It's to go completely ice. I mean, that's why we call it. That's what Isaiah calls it. Avarabba. It's such a great love that he completely forgoes his own cheshbon, his own mitzias, and he even though to his kaviyachal, to his own detriment, that he leaves himself. He's completely ice.
It's not love, or it's a very, very great love?
No, I'm saying it's not what we usually term as love. We're saying it is ava rabba, but it's usually b'chlal. Ava is something that he can is containable. Is something that is appreciated, and he doesn't lose his mitzias. What the Alter Rebbe said, we're familiar with I don't want your Gan Eden, I don't want your Elam Haba, I only want you yourself. That's an expression of this love, of Ava Rabba. In other words, you yourself, what does it mean, I want you yourself? That means that Amos Mitzias, he just like it says in Tanya, that a candle, a flame, is beteva, naturally is constantly yearning and being drawn to its source. Even though if you ask the fire that when you go to your source, it's going to lose its whole mitzias. It's not going to be a fire anymore. It's going to be completely absorbed within its source. Nevertheless, it wants to return to its source. Or another mashal that is brought, that when you have a candle and an avuka, a big flame, a torch, so the flame of a candle, the small fire, it wants to be absorbed in the big fire, even though when it's absorbed in the big fire, it's not. It loses its mitzias, but nevertheless, it wants. It has that kaviyach, that has that desire, even though we're not talking about an emotional thing, but we see this phenomenon. So this level of Ava Rabba, means to go out of one's mitzias and to become completely be absorbed, or what the Zohar calls Lishtava begufa de Malka. Literally means to be completely swallowed in the guf of the Melech, completely be absorbed within the Eibishter. So this is the difference between Zachar and Nekeva. The Nekeva, so it says in the Gemara, Nashim Daitan Kalis, meaning to say the das that they have is a das which is a weak das. Meaning to say that they get distracted by their own mitzias of what they benefit from. That's by an isha. By this is the lower level of ava, which means the ava comes from a place of how he benefits from it. Masha'enkin the Zachar, so it's called das chazak, a strong das, which means that he doesn't lose focus, and he realizes that all of this ava, this lower level of ava, is only coming from a ziv, is only coming from a ray, and it's not the Eibishter himself. As a mele, because he has that focus and he has that realization, so therefore the pursuit is not the benefit that he has, that one has, but the pursuit is to go and lishtava begufa de malka, This Ava Rabba. That's the difference between the Zachar and the Keva. And that's what the Mishnah says, that you serve Hashem Shaloi Amanas L'Kabel Pras. What does it mean, Shaloi Amanas L'Kabel Pras? So why doesn't the Mishnah say Shaloi Amanas L'Kabel Schar? The Indian of Pra, because the Mishnah is not, there's different levels of why one serves Hashem. The Mishnah is not, the deeper pshat in the Mishnah is not to be sholel that you shouldn't serve Hashem with the intention to get a reward. B'chlal. The reward, a simple level of reward. If someone works for someone and to get money, well, what's the motivation? The money. What's the motivation? The motivation is his benefit from it. He cares about the person he's working for. That's not what's driving him, and that's not what the Mishnah is being shoylo. Is preempting that concept. The Mishnah is saying even something which is not your own, not completely, you're doing it just for yourself. You realize that the Eibishter wants it, and you realize that what is the outcome of your Aveda? The Aveda is that you're going to be Nene Miziva Shechina. You're going to appreciate and recognize and have this deep awareness and this deep tainuk in the Eibishter. So therefore, you sense the Eibishter. You sense the one who's your balabas, the one who's commanding you. But nevertheless, within that cheshbon, within that calculation, within that dynamic, it's still you. It's not the same you. The Mishnah is not. It's not the same you as that you're doing it. The motivation is completely coming from a reward. You still have that. You feel the element that you're doing it for the Eibishter, but that element that you're doing it for the Eibishter is still not in its fullest extent. How does the Mishnah articulate that? The Mishnah articulates that Shaloi Amanas L'Kabel Pras. The Mishnah calls it a pras, not a schar. Because pras, with the word pras, it refers to a ziv ashchina. It's only a prusa, it's only a piece. It's only a ziv. And that's the motivation. And even though within that is also the recognition and the realization and the awareness that the Eibishter is, you're doing it for the Eibishter, but it's still not the ikr. It's still called tafel. What's the ikr? The ikr is you're doing it. You're not doing it that you're not even that you have no metzias whatsoever. I want you, dichalein, the Eibishter himself.
That's the Kabel Pras.
That's Shaloi Amanas L'Kabel
Even the
Pras.
smallest ziv, you're not doing it.
Right. So there are many levels here, but over here we're this is broad, definitions. So you have the level where you're doing it mamish for schar, which is the lowest level, right? Yeah, completely. And then you have Amanas L'Kabel Pras. You're doing it for Gan Eden, Elam Haba. And then you have Shaloi Amanas L'Kabel Pras. Over here in the Maimah, we're talking about two levels. We're talking about the Zachar, which is this Ava Rabba, which is Shaloi Amanas L'Kabel Pras. And then you have the Nekeva, which is Amanas L'Kabel Pras. So depending on if the Ava, so that we call it a Haylada, other point. We call it a Haylada, we call it a birth. Why is it a Haylada? Because it's not a person, when Ava and Yira, you have a love and fear, especially love, is something you can relate to, something within your reality. To have love to something which is outside your reality, that's a Haylada. That's something which is it's a new type of existence, something beyond, outside, just like a child now is a new bria, a new existence. So to Ava and Yira, that's why we say Ava and Yira come from Milamaila, comes from the Eibishter. It's a new Metzias. So the only thing is there's two approaches on how I reach that Ava, how I reach that Haylada. There could be a Haylada that comes as a result of the Isha. means that she is the one, meaning the Yid initiates his Aveda. He works hard and he toils, and that's the Isha, Mazras Tchila. And then because the Kavana Pnimius, the Rebbe adds this point, that because the Kavana Pnimius is that what? That the Eibusher wanted that we should do it milamata, we should serve Hashem with our own Yegia, so that brings out a deeper level, just like a teacher sees a student who's toiling, it brings out a deeper aspect of the teacher to want to be mashpia to the student. So the initiation that comes from the bas, the initiation that comes from the woman, meaning the Aveda B'Koyach Atzma, so that brings about this higher level of Yoleda Zachar. It brings about the Zachar aspect, this Ava Rabbah. As opposed to if it's only mitzad the initiation from above, which is like we said last time, like the Baal Shem Tov says, explains what the Gemara says, the different announcements that verbiate from Shamayim to all these things that the neshama hears, that brings about different changes automatically or suddenly without any preparation. That's coming milamayla, and that's something that it has an effect, and therefore it does bring about a vlad. It does bring it brings about one. You also need aveda. In other words, you also need to come towards it, because if you don't do anything, in other words, in order to produce this vlad, you need this union. So both are necessary. The question is, what initiated the process? Did it initiate from me or did it initiate it from above? And that determines what the result is. And that's what it says in the pasuk. And the Zohar says to describe this lower level of Ava, this Avazuta, Nafshi Visicha. What does it mean, Nafshi Visicha? Nafshi Visicha, the Zohar asks, if you the words, it should say Nafshi means my nefesh, I want you. It shouldn't. It seems it's repetitive. The Zohar asks why it should say Nafshi Ivsach. Why is Ivisicha? My nefesh, I want you. So the Zohar explains that Nafshi is not saying my nefesh. It's not. It's a realization that you, Eibishter, you're my nefesh. You're the source of my life. And because you're the source of my life, therefore I want you. That's a lower level. That's a level of Avazuta, because that's a realization and that you're and an experience of love, which is something that is contained and recognized and felt within your mitzias of who you are. You don't become ois mitzias. You don't lose yourself. It's not like the fire which becomes lost within its source. That's an akeva. Okay. So now, let's start from page 6. The second paragraph. Zeu Pirush. And this is what it means. She'ish mazras chila yoledes zachar, masha'enkin ish mazriat chila yoledes nekeva. Ki hine noida, sha'av avir shadamir ben avshem rak yisrusid l'sata. That the ava that one has is only so that it begins, that he's ma'ir, he arouses within himself, is an arousal from below, and that brings about an arousal from above. If the arousal from below begins the process of the initiation, then he reaches a deeper level, which is called Pnimi Yisrael. Pnimi Yisrael is at the level of air, which negates the mitzias of the world, as opposed to Chitzoni Yisrael, which that is given just like Soiviv and Mamalit. That's why he reaches a level of this great love. Sometimes it comes, it's initiation from above. So Eina, where does that is rak b'chinas chitzonis here? That's only the chitzonis, the outer level of air means the air which is measured according to the world. ולכן, אף על פי שהיא מררס גם כן יישא וסירוסת לסתא, ונעשה בחינת ילודה, מאחר שיש יסוד לאלו וסירוסת לסתא, even though you have both, but הילודה היא רק בחינת נקבה. But what is produced when it comes from Lamaila is only in a keva, which is avazuta, which is l'raves sim'oina levad. V'loy li'ishtapich nafshu v'bitla asayir k'neba b'nei avoka, like we said before. V'hinei, I'm going fast over here because we already talked about these points. So now the Alter Rebbe is going to explain the pasuk. We didn't talk about the pasuk. Now all we talked about was the dynamic. What's Hilada? What's Ish and what's Isha? What's Zachar? What's Nekeva? Now with all this information, now we're going to explain the pasuk. Again, we have two diukim in the pasuk. The first diuk is the two understandings of the word Tashis, and the second diuk of the pasuk is the idea that it's a Akara. Okay, so now we're going to understand. The pasuk is telling you a bracha that even though this is a bracha that even though you didn't reach the level of Ava, like a Zachar, meaning to say that you didn't initiate Milamata, you didn't do the order the way it's supposed to be in order to attain this level of Zachar, the bracha of the pasuk is that you should still be given not as an outcome of your avodah, but as a bracha for your avodah. You're given the reward, or they're given the bracha that you should have the ava like a zachar. Okay, how do you get that? So here, with Alter Rebbe introduces a new element, simcha. Simcha brings about that even though you didn't do it according to the plan, you should still be able to get this. What's the idea of simcha? Why does simcha allow that to happen? Because what is the idea of simcha? Simcha means, says simcha piritz together. Simcha breaks the barrier. It breaks the barrier, the limitation. So you have the normal order of things, and simcha breaks that it goes beyond that. Even though, like it says, lefnim mishur sadin. For example, the Zohar says, he brings an example, like a melech, when someone has a court case, and the result of that is capital punishment. He gets put to death, executed. But nevertheless, when he meets the melech has the power to completely absolve that. Not because if it was mitzad, the discussion that's taking place in the court, in other words, the back and forth, the prosecutor and the defender. So then the defender can come up with a different cheshbon, you looked at it from this perspective. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to show you that you can see it from this perspective, and then you can see the innocence. That's not guilty, but the melech breaks the order, the natural order of what's going on, and the melech therefore can absolve him completely. Al derech zeh, the simcha that the spirits gather when a yid has simcha shel mitzvah, which means that he rejoices in the fact that he's doing a mitzvah, that he's serving the Eibishter. So that brings about also a simcha milamayla. And being that the simcha milamayla from the Eibishter, so even though he didn't reach the Pnimi Yisrael, because in order to reach the Pnimi Yisrael, so we said before, it has to be Isha Mazras Tchila, which means that it has to come from your own initiation. But nevertheless, even though he didn't follow that protocol, but because he has the simcha, so therefore it breaks the barriers completely, and that's why he's able to receive this level of zachar. So this is the bracha, the pasuk is saying, sois tasis. Let's see inside. We're on the last paragraph of page 6. On the first column. Which We said before, Isha Mazras Tchila is what gives us Zachar. Means the initiation from below, one's own work. But if it's Ish Mazriat Tchila, means that the initiation is coming from the inspiration is coming from the Lamaila. So he's called an Akara. She's called an Akara. She's called barren. Why is she called barren? Because she doesn't have barren, not the barren from a son. What does it mean, barren from a son? Not being able to attain this level of Zachar, this deep level of Abba, which is Zohar calls Ava Rabba. Even though she has a daughter, meaning to say she has the lower level of Ava. Why is she called an Akara? Because really it's not coming from her. It's not coming from one's Aveda. The Ava is coming milamayla. And therefore, she remains with the definition of Akara, of barren. So, im kain ein nikra elad al shma, v'lechein nikra Akara, v'lechein nikra Akara. That's why she's called barren, because it's not coming from her Aveda, it's coming from milamayla, from the initiation from above, and therefore she retains that title of Akara. And that's what it says in the bracha, that the Akara should be rejoiced with the ingathering of her children. Even though we call her Akara, why do we call her Akara? As we just said, because it's not something, the Ava that is not a result of her own Aveda. The Ava is mainly coming from the initiation from above, and that's what she's called Akara. Nevertheless, that she will be in gather, baneha, means her children, sons, meaning the Zachar, this higher level of Ava. The Hainu Shatir Yulad Zachar. The Alter Rebbe says, how is that possible? That there should be this, how is it possible it produces the level of Ava, this Ava Rabba? Leze'amr b'simcha. That's why the bracha says, V'saga akara b'simcha, as a result of simcha. Sha'idei ha-simcha shel mitzvah yochel is b'chinazu. Ta'af al gav she'ish mazir tchilo, im kol zeh tiyeh yilad zachar. And nevertheless, she produces a zachar. Meaning to say, nevertheless, we attain the level of Ava, which is the level of Ava Rabba. So the Alter Rebbe, to explain that, we've learned this many times, it says in the Parshas, in the Teichacha, in the rebuke in Parshas Savi, it says, that the punishment comes because, so Rashi says, that even though you had everything, you didn't serve Hashem. But the Arizal explains, based on the Rambam also alludes to that what is the punishment coming from? The punishment is coming from that you didn't serve Hashem b'simcha. Not that you didn't serve Hashem when you had it good, but you didn't serve Hashem b'simcha. In other words, implied you served Hashem, but it wasn't b'simcha. So the Alter Rebbe, what do you mean? Because you didn't have simcha, so therefore you get all this punishment. So the Alter Rebbe says the ein tzaddik baretz asher yasa tov v'lo yechta. That every person has a cheshbon that the Eibishter Kaviyachol that he has to pay for. So therefore, if you didn't serve Hashem b'simcha, so everything works according to exactly midas hadin, according to what you get, what you deserve. And b'meila, because there's no such thing as someone who didn't do a chet. There's no such thing as that someone didn't do an aver, like it says in the pasuk. So therefore, if you didn't have the simcha, so then you're given according to what you deserve. But if you have the simcha, so simcha peretz geder, so therefore it absolves you, like we gave the mashal before about the king, that absolving the person, even though he's chayiv, he's found liable. So when you have this simcha, so then the simcha allows you to kind of circumvent the system. And that's the reason, that's the explanation. Because you didn't serve Hashem b'simcha, so therefore everything else rises to the top. And you get according to what you deserve. Let's see in the words of the Alter Rebbe. And now the Alter Rebbe brings the next pasuk, "V'avadata seivecha," that you serve, because of that, you served your enemies. The implication of the pasuk is, even though you serve Hashem, but you did because you didn't have simcha, therefore you get the punishment. What's the punishment? That you serve your enemies, meaning to say that you're not free. Why do we go in galus? Why do we serve our enemies just because we didn't have simcha? The Alter Rebbe says, every person has some deficiency. And because of the deficiency, he receives the einish, he receives the punishment. If you would have served Hashem with the simcha shel mitzvah, simchazu, the simcha would be so great. It would arouse the simcha from above. And that removes the dinim, judgment. Because when you're in the face of the king, in other words, when the king is present, then you have chayim, then you have life. But if you don't serve Hashem b'simcha, everything rises to the surface, and therefore you get the punishment. So now we'll understand also over here in this pasuk, the pasuk of Tasish Tazis. This whole explanation that we said in the beginning, depending that we determine who initiates, that determines the outcome. That the Alter Rebbe says, "Beit ish ki sazria she'oz yilad ezachor, beit ish mazria tchila she'eni yilad ezel nekeva." All of that. That's when the system. That's the system that the Eibush set up. Say the ishtalshus according to the kava mida, according to the amount and the system. That if this is the way the system works, that if the Isha is initiating first and is fit, that's what brings about the Yolad Zachar, that this level of Ava, which the Zohar calls Ava Rabba, Bechinas Ava Rabba. When a person doesn't, he's not fit, he didn't make a keli, he didn't have the initiation first. It only comes from a chitzonius place. The chitzonius place means that it's an Ava Zut, it's a lower level of Ava. When a person has simcha shel mitzvah, that he's arousing this deep level of simcha melamayla, shasimcha gerim agilui, v'ushar ba v'nimshach me'atzmus ha'maitzla b'tisefes v'ilui rav shaloi b'derech v'seder adraka. Al derech dugma, and then here the Alter Rebbe brings what we said before, the simcha of a king, sheyitzas chutz l'gider v'agbalas hamidus. When he's in b'simcha, so he goes out completely from his limitation. V'lachen yuchal is galas l'katan kumei l'gadol b'shav mamish. Making the Maila Mamish, Bechinis is Gal Simcha Yena, Hini Oz, Mischarbim, Misarbim, Miskalim, Yachat Koler Yena, Machin Shum Hapish, Bin Maila Mata, Yiminu Small. So now there's no difference. Maila Mata, Yiminu Small. In other words, it breaks all the barriers. Vazai, when there's a Simcha, Nimshach Sh'af, Akaratik was Banel, Da'ainu Sh'af, Al Pishi Bechinis Akara. Even though he's the level of Akara, barren. Like we said before, what does an Akara mean? Means that it wasn't something that it produced in the Keva, meaning that what was produced here was only because it was initiated from above. Nevertheless, he attains the level of Yelad Zachar, this Avarabba, which is Zachar. And this is what we're asking the Eibishter, Sois Tasis v'Sagla Kara. Shaydei, we're asking Hashem, Sois Tasis, that you should be besimcha. And by being besimcha, then that brings Shaydei, Simcha Shel Mitzvah, Lemata. Ha'akara, he can ask Yisrael, Tasis v'Sagla Ba'atzma. Besimcha Shel Mitzvah, that brings about the higher level of simcha. The simcha that comes from Lamaila, meaning to say that now breaks all the barriers that brings about this higher, this Avarabba. And as a result of that, you will make her happy. What do you mean you will make her happy? You will reveal this, you will bring out and express this level of Avarabba. That's the inyan of a sameach. The Eibusher is being sameach. V'lachein ha'idea simcha gam ken lo yeh b'chinas avadat sevecha. That's why that as a result of this simcha, then you won't. It'll be mevatel the inyan of avadat sevecha, because the inyan of avadat sevecha, there's many levels there. But one level, the simple pshat is that you're in gullus. The other pshat is that you're being ruled by your nefesh habahamis, by your inclinations. So when is that possible? When the mitzias is involved, whatever level mitzias we're talking about. So therefore, it's subject to this downward spiral, which can bring the mitzias in its fullest magnified sense, which is usurping your inclinations. But that's only possible when we're talking about a level of ava, which is ava zuta. But when it's ava rabba, when it's coming is from the place which is the zachar, which is the Eibusher, he wants the Eibusher himself, or like it's called the ishtava begufa de malka, to become completely absorbed by the Eibusher, even though he completely out of his own mitzias, so then v'avadat sevecha is gone. Can't spiral to that. V'achlein ha'idea simcha gam ki lo yeh b'chinas avadat sevecha shekol b'chinas hashinuyim v'anefila ma'avidas Hashem migados l'ktanos gam anefila b'tayvis shezeu ini v'avadat sevecha kol zorak tachas asher le'avadat b'simcha. All of that is in the system of because he didn't serve Hashem b'simcha. In other words, within that system, so then it can deteriorate. כי אם בכנס יש משאוי ומעסיק שהוא בכנס לגרמי, ומזה נמשך הנפילה. אבל ידי השמחה בהשם לא יהיה שינויים אלו. And that's the explanation of the pasuk Tachas Asher Le'avadat. We answered the two diukim of Tasish, because Tasish has the first diuk is it's a poel emet. In other words, what she does to herself, meaning to say she serves Hashem b'simcha, and that brings about the poel yotze, the Eibusher gives the simcha, and as a result of the fact the Eibusher gives the simcha, that brings about the second part of the bracha, v'tagel ha'akara b'kibbutz banea, that even though she was an akara in the sense that she didn't have this, the right sense of the process where it started from her, nevertheless, the Eibusher gives us this ava rabba. And this is true not only in these, we're talking about high levels of Ava, but even Bechlal. Even if you're not at the level of Ava Zuta that we're talking about here, but even if you're at the level of what Ava Zuta can deteriorate to, so you're on the bottom of that bottom of the totem pole, that you're on a level of Avadat Sevecha, that you're subservient to your inclinations. Nevertheless, through Simcha, it also breaks that barrier and breaks the system, kaviyachol, it circumvents the system. That also here, the Eibusher gives you like the king who's in a level of simcha, breaking all the barriers and reaching a level of ava rabba, this deep level of ishtava begufa de malka.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Have you ever had it that there's no it's just the Leila? There's something arousing you from above.
Yeah, but the question is, what brings that about? Like we said before, you have to have, in order to produce a vlad, you have both. You have the ish and isha, but in order to, what is the main the main thrust here? Is the main thrust the ish, or the main thrust is the isha? The main is it milamata lamayla or milamayla lamata?
Yes, something.